Give me 1 second and for this to connect, and then we'll be good to go. It's loading.
Okay.
Give me 1 second and we're live.
Awesome. Thanks, Trent. It is 7:03 p.m. and I will call this meeting of the Old Saybrook Board of Education to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all. Nice flag.
Love the flag.
This one has 50 stars. I counted before I posted it.
Thank you, Trent.
Well, I was so heartbroken after the last meeting. I had to look it up, and so I realized I was flying the Truman era flag when there were 48 stars. So,
well, thanks for the correction, Trent. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, so we're going to start tonight off meeting our interim associate principal, Mr. Dave Plotkin. So I'll turn it over to Jan and Dave.
Yes, so as is our custom, whenever we hire an administrator, we have them come to the board for either a final interview or for an opportunity to say hello. And in this case, we have Mr. Plotkin, who's not new to any of you, I'm sure. Not really. You've at least heard of him. We have him here tonight, and there is a copy of his most recent resume in your board folder. And also, he told me that since he's going to be home, I said, we'll introduce the family because that's a custom with our Board of Education too. I know I came my first night with my family, so Dave's here with his. So Dave, if you want to say a few words and introduce the whole fam, we'd love to say hi.
Sure. Somebody's already very excited to say hello and has started waving. So it is a real honor to be this evening in a new role. I'm so excited to have this opportunity and so grateful. And the support team that's all possible is right here. My wife, Megan. And this is our oldest boy, Spencer. And our newest addition to the family, this is Keegan. Keegan will be 3 months old on the 11th. And Spencer has a two-year-old birthday coming up. And I won't tell you how many months Meg is.
No.
Yeah, we are very proud Old Saybrook residents, and just feel like we have the best community to raise a family in, and eventually a school system, which already hard to believe that we're might be thinking about that in just a year from now with our oldest here. So that's my family. And again, I just want to say how grateful I am for this opportunity and also very, very excited.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming tonight, Dave. And it's so great to meet the whole family. It's hard to remember how many weeks, months, keeping track that way of the babies. They both look like they're ready to escape though.
Yeah, we got to work on our attention span a little bit. I think that will come with age, right?
No, it's all good. It's all good. Well, we wish you the best next year in your role, and look forward to seeing you, at meetings and such. And George, I see you got your hand up, so go ahead.
Right. I mean, again, I just want to welcome David to the district as administrator. You've been for quite a while, and I think, David, I've known you for a long time. You've helped both my kids. We just want to extend from the board our welcome to let you know if there's anything we can do to support you. Please let us know. I don't know if my headphones are working, but hopefully.
No, we heard you. We heard you, George. It broke up a little bit, but I think you got the message across.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, George. Yeah, if there's anything that we can do to, assist you in your endeavors, definitely, we look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the support. I really appreciate that.
You bet. Awesome. Any other comments from the board?
Just congratulations and good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Congratulations. Look forward to working with you. It's Baker.
Thanks, Eileen.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well,
David,
thanks.
pleasure to meet you. And
Yeah.
just want to say hi, Alan Hyla, and good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Hopefully you'll see us in person soon. Awesome. Thank you so much, David. You can stay for as long as you want, but we'll understand if you don't. You're forgiven. It's not a test. Not a test.
Really, it's not really a test.
Of course not. Right.
Right. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for coming tonight.
Of course, my pleasure.
Awesome. All right, so I don't see any folks in the attendees room, so I will not put us through the audience of citizens announcement. So I'll move on to our final reports from our student Board of Education representatives, and so I'll hand it off to you guys.
Hi everybody, it's good to be back. So glad to see all of you. So this is our June 7th report. So yearbooks have just come out. People are getting them from the office. The seniors got their yearbook a few days ago when we had our senior trip to Six Flags New England, and we started signing them then, which was really exciting. Matt's in charge of the yearbook and he did an excellent job. Also, all the clubs are wrapping up with their final meetings and elections for next year. The drama club recently went to the Halo Awards in Waterbury, and one of our cast members won a Halo for Best Comedic Performance by an Actress in a Musical, which was really exciting. Student Council recently put on a blood drive at Fireman's Field. We had Field Day, and that was a huge success, as well as Spirit Week with lots of awesome activities and costumes. Taj, which is Theater, Arts, and Jazz, is tomorrow. Many artists will be there to show their talents or their work and to perform. So we have all of our classes are wrapping up lessons, projects, and prepping for finals, which will be next week. We had Underclassmen and Senior Awards Night, as well as the awarding of many scholarships. Our valedictorian and salutatorian were announced, as well as other graduation speakers. And we had a big capstone presentation 2-day span where we had advisory with lots of great presentations. Current sophomores and juniors are looking at a combined class trip to DC next year, and multiple teachers are working really diligently to make this happen. So very exciting.
And for these, do you guys hear me?
Yep, excellent.
Okay, perfect. And for the sports reports, wrapping up this, the biggest one we've had is track and field. We have a lot of different people, which I'm not going to name them, but they're all in the document if you want to take a look at them. But some notable performances: we had the state meet on the 12th of on the 12th. It was a couple weeks ago, but we had state opens yesterday. So that was for anybody who qualified, who placed well in the Class S state meet. And we do have the girls 4x1 relay team who is going to all New England's this Saturday, which is awesome to hear. I believe they placed first in the state meet, and then in opens they placed second. So we're expecting a stellar performance out of them then. We had Mitchell DePalma and Barth Thatchy, who went to state opens for hurdles for Mitchell, and then Barth went for discus and shot put, and he did really well, especially as a sophomore. And then a lot of the girls placed like the 4x1, 4x2, and 4x4. For baseball, they ended their season 17-4, which is really good, especially considering how well they've improved for the past couple of years. They won the Shoreline Championship and unfortunately got out in the first round of states, but the first Shoreline Championship in 40 years.
Wow.
Softball, they ended theirs a couple weeks ago. Only one victory against Westbrook Portland. Boys lacrosse, although their record wasn't the best this year, they certainly did way better than previous years, which is 6-10 record. Girls lacrosse is doing very well. They have their semifinals game today. I don't know if it's still going on, but we should be hearing something about them soon.
I just checked the score, Matt. Unfortunately, we lost by 1.
Oh,
Girls lacrosse.
That's tough.
9-8.
Okay. Well, their season's over, unfortunately, but they still did very well for the season. Golf, I believe the last time we reported, they had a similar score ranking. I don't know how the score works, but they're 47.5, which placed them like in the middle of the Division III standings. And for tennis, both the boys and girls finished their seasons with a record of 4-10. So that's it.
Excellent. So just to preface before I open it up for discussion, we've got an agenda item, down a couple of agenda items where we're going to talk about your survey results. But if anybody's got any questions about tonight's report, please raise your hand. So George, I see your hand up. And we can't hear you, so you're probably on mute. And I see yours up too, Eileen. Thanks.
Is it better?
Yep, there you go.
Thank you. So I was interested about the Washington D.C. trip. You're saying that's a combined sophomore and junior, which I presume means the current sophomore and juniors. Is that correct? And is the reason does it combine because this year's junior did not get the chance to go, and so they will try and go junior senior year? Very good. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's a nice gesture. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Eileen, go ahead with your question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Super. So I just wanted to touch base on the event for tomorrow night, Theater, Arts, and Jazz. And what time is that, McKenna?
I'm not sure. I know it's in the evening. I should probably figure that out because I'm performing.
It's at
It's
6:30.
7:30, isn't it?
6:30.
6:30.
So we've got it wrong on our, the time has probably been changed. The one that's on the calendar said 7:30. So I believe Matt must be right. He must have the latest and greatest.
So that's at 6:30.
And in addition to the Theater, Arts, and Jazz, a lot of people will be presenting their capstone News BD Now pieces or their CCR. So those will be all on display as well. I'll have my documentary set up there, so that's why I know about that. But yeah, it's not just Theater, Art, Jazz. It's also other projects. It's just a big gallery walk for everybody. So
Go ahead, Eileen.
And I just wanted to say, I think I said it at the last board meeting, I'm so impressed with the costumes. I think they were absolutely fabulous. I wanted to go to every single one, but we could only go to 2 just based on the scheduling. And actually, Jeremy Taylor had sent me, Matthew, a documentary because he thought it was spectacular and he knew that I couldn't get to everything. So I hope we see you in film one day. And we'll say, we need him when.
Exactly.
But anyway, both of you have been fabulous. Thank you so much for your reporting.
thank you.
Welcome.
And if I could just say, both of our student reps who are leaving us really after tonight, and sorry to have them go, but looking forward to what they do next. The board did give them gifts. Usually we do that in person at a board meeting, but I was able to go to the high school today and spend a little time there. And they each got their nameplates so they can remember when. And then they each received a book about the college university that they've chosen. So McKenna's off to Denver, and Matt, UConn? Yeah. Yeah, so congratulations, guys. Thanks for everything you've done.
And Jan, do we know who the new student reps are?
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, Chairwoman Barros and I met with them today. It's John Witzak and Elliot Hurtis.
They juniors, seniors?
One
of each.
Yep, one of each.
Nice.
Yeah.
And where are you going in Denver, McKenna?
I'm going to the University of Denver.
And what's your study?
I think I'm going to do science.
Good for you.
Nice.
Yeah, good luck to the both of you. It's been great to work with you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll come back to you shortly. So Karen's out tonight. On the clipboard, there is the CABE journal. And if I could just remind everybody, if you're not talking, to mute yourself because we've got some feedback right now. So there's the CABE journal, which, everybody should be getting anyway. And then we had a letter from a parent with some questions that we've referred to Jan to follow up with them on. So that's correspondence. So up next, meeting minutes. I'd like a motion to approve our regular meeting minutes from May 24th. Get a motion on that. Moved by Trevor, seconded by Alan. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Abstained by Steve, and the rest were approved. So moved. Thank you. All right, so coming back to our student representatives, I will turn it over to Jan and Eileen in regards to the survey results from this year.
Eileen, would you like to take lead on this?
Let me just start. 1 second. Let's see if I get this.
I can just do the little introduction. As anyone who's been on the board more than this year, but for those who haven't, at the end of each year, we ask our student representatives to kind of provide an exit opportunity for us to explain what worked well, what they appreciated about the opportunity to be on the board, what they learned, and perhaps some advice for us going forward to make it even more enjoyable experience. And so McKenna and Matt both did that. They filled them out, and they're there for you to look at. And Eileen, if you'd like to add or yes.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. So actually, we always, as Jan was saying, we give this to all of the student representatives because it gives us an opportunity to take a look at areas that maybe we can improve as a board in terms of some of their thoughts. And McKenna, is there anything you want to share that you really feel that could have improved for you?
I think the only thing I added on was that sometimes we didn't have a lot of access to documents, and so I felt like a little bit out of the loop sometimes, but I'm sure a good percentage of those documents were we weren't allowed to see anyway, so that was the only thing I had.
So maybe that's just a question, like Jan, I know that and thanks for that, your thoughts. How do student representatives get the opportunity to have our agendas and the paperwork that they can have access to? Is that something?
Exactly the same way you do. So they get the board packet as they always have. So we used to do that by hand, and now it's done electronically. They don't receive anything in executive session.
Okay, that's what I thought too. And I shared with somebody who actually used to have a courier that used to go to people's houses and drop off the binders. And so we moved electronically. Anything, Matthew, your thoughts?
Not to improve, but I just want to say how grateful I am for Mr. Gerber's. His communication throughout the whole year has been just remarkable. Just letting us know when there's a next meeting, letting us know when there's changes, if he needs anything else from us, and then just getting on top of all the things that we might be missing, like the survey. That was great. Like it really helped to be A, stay organized, and B, just be in the loop of everything, and for me just get my stuff done. And it just made the whole process easier. So I just want to thank him for all of that.
Thank you very much. That was my pleasure to work with you guys, really.
Thank you.
Also, what I noticed that you both seem to comment on, which I appreciate, is that the opportunity for you to comment on agenda items. And I think that that's something that I hope that, the environment felt comfortable, that you always felt like if you disagreed with something, you could certainly share it because that's why you're there. And I'm thrilled that you are student representatives. And I really enjoyed listening to the things you had to say and keeping all of us really giving us a pulse of what's happening at the high school. And I have a question for both of you. It seemed to have come up at different evaluations. And I look forward to hearing your response. How do students find out if they would like to bring an item to you? Do you ever have that experience? Like, why is the food so this? Or bring it to the Board of Ed meeting? Or do you have a chance to talk to students about what's happened at a board meeting?
I think the best opportunity for that is at our Superin meetings, our Superintendent's Advisory Committee meetings. There, students who have questions, we can talk to them about stuff that's going on our side, and then we hear a lot about what they're discussing are kind of the most important topics going around the school at the moment. So we get a lot of concerns that way. And I have had a few kids approach me in different classes, or I've said, hey, I'm the Board of Ed rep. Do you want me to bring this to Superin or different things? So I think those are the two ways I've gotten the most information from this year.
Terrific. I hope you know that you can always bring something to the Board of Education for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Matthew, thoughts? How to reach everybody?
Yeah, I don't I never really had anybody directly approach me with a concern, but it was usually like the kind of general concern or like a wonder of like why something is like through the whole grade or the school really just kind of spreads, and then you just kind of pick it up. So that would be the only thing. That's mostly how I got my stuff. And usually if it we never really brought anything up to the board directly because we didn't really have that many issues. I don't think there were any really. But if there was, it was usually something school based, which meant it didn't have to come up here anyway. So that also was a part of it. So,
or it was already being addressed. Like I know that we were already on top of like dress code stuff, and there were plenty of times where it got already brought up and it was a concern at the high school, and like it kind of was already in the works.
Great. And did you both feel like you could participate in a variety of committees?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Because this input is really important when we're developing policy like the dress code, and getting a sense of how you feel about that and hearing other people's opinions or things that you may have felt like, oh, I'm so glad that we got input here, or, you know, I'd like to get more input on something else.
That was my favorite parts for sure. I joined a lot of the little committees throughout this year, especially, and it was really valuable to see the policy being broken down. And that's one of the other reasons like I wanted to see more of the paperwork, because I wanted to understand like the policies that were going to go into effect, because I wanted to see like how it would affect students.
Yeah, but that's terrific. And hopefully you both will have some time to educate our new student representatives on ways that they can be effective student representatives to our the Elsaberg Board of Education, because your knowledge and, you know, the wherewithal, sometimes when you start being a student representative, I know it's always like, well, wait, can I say something? Is this the right time? And then you can share with them your comfort level and how it grew. And you know, that the Board of Education are really very student centered, and we really enjoy having you on our Board of Education. I can't even imagine without having students there.
So Alan's got a question. So go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, just some quick comments. I want to thank McKenna and Nat for their participation. And, you know, I think it's great that the board gives students an opportunity to participate. And, you know, it was impressive. You both showed command, composure, and you were insightful on your own. And certainly when you were asked questions by Board of Ed members and you were put on the spot, and your responses were, you know, very intelligent, insightful, candid at times. And I think that's great. So I want to thank you both, and we appreciate what you've done for the board, and wish you both well in Denver and at UConn. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. George, I see your hand up. Go ahead. And I think you're on mute, George.
Unbelievable. Sorry. So no, I appreciate both your comments in terms of that there weren't too many issues that were going on at the school that was not already being addressed at the board level. And I think that's a really good feedback that issues are being brought to the board, whether it's by administration or by Jan and so on. So I think it's a good confirmation that we are doing what we need to do, because if there were a lot of issues that you guys were identifying that we did not hear about, that would be a much worse situation. So in some ways, the fact that there's not too many is actually a good thing, at least from my perspective. So thank you for that feedback.
Thanks, George. Go ahead, Karina. I see your hand up too.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Alan had said, that the both of you are so, you just have a wonderful presence, both very mature, articulate, and, you know, we're really definitely assets for the board. And I have to say, there were in some previous years, because it was interesting in reading your survey, that it is sometimes challenging for you guys to get information on what you should report to the board. And I always wondered, like, how do you get it? You know, do you just get a list? But apparently, you know, so you guys clearly put a lot of effort into gathering information, and I want to compliment you, because I felt like this year we got more diverse information than in some previous years. I think in some previous years, student reports seemed somewhat limited to sports and music. And I think you guys did a really, and that's not to discredit any previous student reps. It's just reflective of, I think, sometimes the challenge of getting information to report. And so I just want to compliment the both of you on not only the variety of information that you shared, but the level of detail that you were able to share on a number of different topics. So certainly really, very informative for us to hear those kind of things. So thanks for the work that you did for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karina. Go ahead, Eileen.
Just a question for both of you. When you would get your packet, was there a staff member that you could review the packet with? If you had any questions, or did you have any questions that you felt you wanted to be able to talk to someone ahead of time before a board meeting to understand what the topic might have been about?
Mr. Gerbers has been a great resource, like Matt said, for us. So I would definitely, if we had questions, definitely just email him. We got shared Google Drives and not given packets. I don't know if we got sent the Google Drives 100% of the time, but they were there quite often.
If you had questions about content, you could ask someone beside. Okay. It's just important to know because your students, and that might be a topic that you might not have been familiar with, and you might want to get more information about it. So was there a staff member, or is it just?
Oh, I think we could have. I definitely reached out to some teachers and club leaders for some clarification because there were a few questions, and I know the board had some questions that I couldn't answer a few months ago. So I reached out to one of our English teachers who runs the department, and he gave quite a good bit of information that was really useful. So.
Perfect. Thanks so much. That's important.
Great. Thanks. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for your survey. It helps us be better for next year's, student representatives, certainly. And it also lets us know that you had a good experience, which is really important. And hopefully this will be something that you'll see reflected in other things that you participate in as you go through, school, if you're part of clubs. And, obviously it's always interesting to have experience with Robert's rules. Too, and see how formal meetings are conducted. But we're super appreciative to have you guys, and the time that you took to spend with us is really appreciated. And I look forward to crying at giving you guys diploma, which is kind of my tradition every year. So the crazy lady up front crying is me. So. And I will accost you when I see you in town and ask you embarrassing questions about college and what you're doing for work. That's another thing I'm famous for. So, but I look forward to seeing you guys in the community, in the future.
We'll be excited to answer them.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
All right. So, Eileen, you're up again. You're the star of tonight's meeting.
Oh, we're talking the first week. It feels like such a long time ago. Jan, you want to give a preface to this? We know that in your packet, actually, all of this is the first reading, if I'm accurate. It feels like a long time ago. So we addressed a lot of issues, and Jan always does a wonderful synopsis, which is really helpful, as opposed to having, myself go through each and every policy. So Jan, if you would agree, maybe I'll open it up to some questions.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, I see Karina's hand up. So before we get started, go ahead, Karina.
This may be premature. It's exactly what you were just saying. I don't see a synopsis here. Am I missing that, or did I not? I tried scrolling because I know I didn't scroll last time when I was looking for a document.
Well, what happened is that Trent explained it to me because I think, and I just did it like a few hours ago, that you have to go to policy, go, to the meetings, and then it's in that area way to the right. Go ahead, Trent. Maybe you can explain.
All right.
It's a scroll.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's over to the right. It's I know sometimes if you don't have it up on full screen or whatever, it's all the way over to the right. It's a summary of the policies.
I don't see it.
But you have to go to the policy section of the.
Yeah, it's under the subcommittee, Karina, the policy subcommittee.
Okay, that's what.
There you go.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
You got it.
And if I'm always open to changing the arrangement of the notebook from year to year. So if we want to take a look at that for next year, because it's, hard to find things in multiple places, then I'm more than open to looking at that and trying to streamline it.
That would be great.
And I see you have a question.
I know that the dress policy was something that everybody was really interested in. So Jan, do you want to highlight that, since I know you worked really hard with the committee?
All right. I was just going to give George a chance to ask a question. Eileen. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that was going to be my
where it
question
was.
if it gets addressed. Yes. So I'll wait to see what the answer is.
It's in the policy subcommittee folder. That was the question.
No. I that was my question, but the question was going to be about the dress code. But if Jan's going to talk about it right now, then my question may be answered already.
Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
All right. So looking at these holistically, the first 5, the 1,000 series smoking, the 4,000 alcohol, tobacco, and drug-free workplace. So that's a personnel policy. And then the next 3 student policies: chemical health for student athletes, drug and alcohol use by students, and student discipline. All of the changes, with the exception of some technical changes, are all about the changes in the cannabis law. So our policies have to reflect what has changed in state statute. And while I don't want anyone to walk away from the meeting thinking that this now means that cannabis is okay to use, it basically just includes cannabis in the definitions of things that cannot be smoked or cannot be used on school grounds. In the student discipline policy, it basically reduces cannabis from being treated like a scheduled drug to being treated more like if you had possession of alcohol. The Shipman and Goodwin summary directive to the policy committee uses that example. It says you cannot treat possession of a small amount of marijuana by a minor any differently than you would treat possession of a small amount of alcohol by a minor. And so really it just makes room for that legislation. It explains that these things are still not okay to have on school grounds. It's not even okay, obviously, for personnel to be under the influence on school grounds. Or at school functions or activities. And it does extend it, although it was always intended, it does extend it in the language to include buses, school buses, and other forms of transportation. So that's just kind of a big holistic summary of those first 5. Any questions before I move on to student dress, which I know is really the interesting one? And McKenna, you worked on student dress. You were with us on that policy committee. Yeah. So the student, so I'm sorry, wait time. Does anyone have a question on the first 5? Policy committee reviewed them pretty well. Okay. So let's go to student dress. This is the one that we started work on last spring. And we were about to adopt the Shipman and Goodwin policy pretty much wholesale and said, and this really came from the board, this is really antiquated. It spent a lot of time talking about pagers and, all kinds of things. And it really wasn't all that helpful in our community. It addressed issues that really are not issues in our community. Our dress code issues, and McKenna and Matt can jump in and talk about it from seeing things, and tend to be about what is appropriate to wear to work, to school. How much of your person needs to be covered, and can we wear hats, and what about dark glasses in school? So these are the things that we tend to address. And so the subcommittee of students set out to address them. And then the policy itself was sent to the staff at each school, and the staff at each school used the regulation to modify it slightly at each school. So I'm happy to walk through this whole thing because this is our one chance to take a look. Remember, this will be at a consent agenda next time. And McKenna, I'm going to invite you, please. I see your hand up. But I'm inviting you to co-present this with me because you helped to write it.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to
Sound
add
good?
that Ms. Cruccio brought up a really cool kind of concept on focusing the dress code as like how you would approach like workplace wear for the students, and like how appropriate it was for the workplace and that type of thing, instead of really focusing on like what we should allow and control students to wear and not to wear. And I think it really changed the tone of the piece, and was just a really great way to look at it moving forward.
Thank you. And I think that the students also made it really clear to me that we need to explain the why. So you'll see for each of these, it doesn't just say what the rule is, it then says, here's why we have that rule. So they don't seem arbitrary, and you get less opportunity for students to say, why are you pushing this issue? So walking through, would you like me to go ahead, Eileen?
I just wanted to mention that what happens is it's a synopsis on the student dress, but if you've had a chance to look at the policy itself, it's actually broken down. Each school at the regulation has an opportunity to decide the dress code for each of those buildings. And that's important, and I think very progressive. And Jan, was celebrating that, because that I think is important. What you might be doing at high school might be very different from Goodwin School and also the middle school.
Right. So the policy is for all 3 schools. The regulations are slightly different at each school. So we had to create a policy that had some vagueness built into it so that each school could make it fit, even just fit their facility. Mm-hmm. Okay. So letter A talks about oversized clothing, and that's a safety concern. It explains why you can't do that. You can't do that because it could be dangerous. Someone could be hiding something in it, and it could also be a tripping hazard. So it's explained right there. B is partially including state law. Am I breaking up at all?
No, you're good.
Okay, good. B includes some language from state law about protective hairstyles, protective religious head coverings, which obviously we cannot do anything that would infringe upon someone's freedom of religion, as long as their religion isn't, we're going to wear a hat so big that you can't get down the hallway. So I don't know that religion, so I was just being silly. But honestly, it's meant to allow for freedom of religion, and then to include the protected hairstyles. But it also talks about how head coverings, can be included, which then allows the high school later on in the regulations to include some language about being able to wear hats, but not the other 2 schools. And then C is footwear, which marks floors, is a safety hazard. Plus, Mrs. Pendleton would be very angry if the floors are marked, so it's just better that we not mark them. Sunglasses, again, this is a safety thing. Whether worn or carried unless required because of a medical issue, shouldn't be worn. And why? Because it hides too much of your face. They don't like you wearing them in banks either, right? If you go sit down at a bank, they'll ask you to take your sunglasses off. Oversized metal belt buckles, multi-finger rings, these are safety concerns. Someone wearing that could use those things as a weapon. And so why provide that opportunity for someone who has ill intent? McKenna, again, jump in if you want to. F is attire or accessories that contain vulgarity or that contain overly offensive or disruptive writing or pictures, which are likely to disrupt the environment, the educational environment. So this is a judgment call, right? But the truth of the matter is there's a lot of case law that talks about when someone can make a judgment that it's disrupting the educational environment, starting all the way back with Tinker, which is a case, that's First Amendment case from the late 60s, I think. And so if we had a situation where someone was wearing a shirt and there were, 20, 30 people coming to the main office saying, we're very offended by this shirt. It's very insulting. It's upsetting. It's, sexist. It's racist. It's abusive of a particular group of people. When you have that many people coming to the office, you probably have a situation where you have a disruption of the education environment. And clearly, I use stuff that might be a little less obvious. Clearly, certain vulgarities are pretty obvious to everybody and pretty widely accepted, at least in our community. We can't have G is you can't incite violence on a shirt, so clearly that makes sense. Attire H is attire that depicts logos or emblems with use of drugs or tobacco products or alcoholic beverages, all prohibited. Which doesn't interfere with our previous 5 ones, because you can't wear a beer on your t-shirt and you can't wear a marijuana leaf on your t-shirt. You're not supposed to be wearing those to school. And then I is the language that McKenna was referencing. We were trying to find a way to say to kids, so what can you wear? What should you wear to school? And we originally had like business casual listed, but then when we got to the staff, they said, well, what is that? Does that mean kids can't wear sweatpants ever? They can't wear like, you know, I don't know, shorts on a hot day. And so we changed it to letter I. That is just more of a statement of a standard of behavior. You know, we want you to dress in a way that's respectful of yourself, it's respectful of others, and that this is school. This is not Saturday night hanging out with friends. This is school. It's a higher standard than more casual. Please be comfortable. Please be safe. Be practical. Don't choose to wear 5-inch heels in the hallways of Old Saybrook High School. It's probably not going to be a successful day. Right? So these are things that we really wanted to state. And we also wanted to be sure because our young ladies, both at the high school and the middle school, have said to me that they're very concerned that dress code policies often seem to single out women's clothing. So this next series of sentences, we kind of workshopped with our group, and we came up with overly revealing. Now we're trying to get any gender bias out of it. Overly revealing, ill-fitting, meaning too small or overly large, see-through clothing, or clothing that does not cover the body of the wearer is not permitted. And then we wanted to talk about like skirt length and short length without, again, singling anybody out. So we said shorts and skirts should not be worn if they expose more than the wearer's legs, and tops must cover the torso. Anything to add, McKenna, on that?
I think you covered it. A lot of what we were focusing on was, again, the why. I think that's something I brought up at one of the first meetings because the original and some other schools' dress code policies had some conflicting language in it, or just questions on why this is the way it is. And I definitely got questions from students. I think that was one of the more driving concerns, is that people would ask me why the school has this policy, and I'd have to explain it like based on how Ms. Peruccio would have explained it to me. And there were great explanations, a lot of safety concerns, stuff like that, where it's like, oh, I didn't even realize that was a safety concern until I sat down and talked about it. But making sure that it's, you know, clear to the reader, or you're going to have to go around to every student to get them to kind of on board with, hey, this is a safety concern. That's why we have to do it.
Thanks, McKenna.
Steve, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
I don't understand the sentence. Shorts and skirts should not be worn if they expose more than the wearer's legs. More than what? I mean, the way I read it is they're not allowed to wear shorts or skirts.
No. So our intention with that language was to say that, you know, the top of your leg is about as much as we want anyone to be showing.
I can understand that. I don't get that intent from that sentence. But whatever.
No, it's something that we could send back to the policy committee if you wanted to look at it. We tried that out with some students. I know they got the intent because they kind of laughed or smirked. But we could do one of two things. We can kind of test it out, see if people get that in general. Or we can consider, you know, reworking the language of the policy.
Oh, go ahead, Eileen. And you're muted, Eileen.
Okay, good?
Yep.
Okay, Steve, thanks for your input. So if you think that this is why we have a first reading. So if there's some language that you think would better clarify that, you know, you can please, you know, submit that, and then we can look at it, you know, when it comes back for the second reading. Although Jan said it's on a consent agenda, but if you have some other language, you can shoot it my way, and we can certainly, you know, make it clearer if that's something, you know, that the board looks at, if you find it, you know, a challenge. This committee is open, you know, and that's the purpose of the first reading. So if there's something that, you know, catches someone's attention, please do. Okay, Steve? If there's some other language that you feel would be, you know, clearer, you know, to a student, just if you want to give me a jingle and you want to just wordsmith it, just let me know.
Yeah, I'll mull it over, see if I can come up with something. It's just, to me, it's a very, it's great that it's an open-ended,
Yeah.
But I found in the past that when you give something open-ended, the interpretation, we have, the sentence might, to me, doesn't provide anything to begin the assessment on.
It might be
and what may be implied. So I'll see what I can come up with, and if not,
Yeah,
I mean, both can vote and we can move forward.
Yeah, but thanks for that, because I was looking at it just now. I was like, shorts and skirts should not be worn if they expose more than the wearer's legs. So it's kind of like some people wear short shorts, right? So maybe that means more like a Bermuda, more like Bermuda shorts, right? And so maybe it might need, a little bit, more interpretation. But I'd be glad, to get your feedback, and maybe that's, clearer. So I appreciate it greatly. The other thing I wanted just to say is that if you get a chance, a lot of the policy that's existing, as Jan was saying, they took some of that language and they just made it more user friendly. So something like shirts and blouses that reveal the abdomen, chest, or undergarments are not acceptable. That kind of seemed like an older way of talking about dress. So I think that the language that's presented addresses it, but I think in a much more sophisticated way. Like see-through clothing, we did, maybe some of the language there was changed, but some of the substitutes really mean the same thing. But this is an opportunity actually tonight to be able to, share your thoughts and ideas, and I appreciate it. Students as well.
Go ahead, Karina, I see your hand up.
Thanks. My question is, I have two questions. One is on C, and it's certainly not the part about marking the floors, but the second part of that sentence is footwear that is a safety hazard is prohibited. Is that meant to imply like flip-flops, or do you have an idea of what unsafe footwear would be?
Yeah, so it will be situational, because if you're in a culinary class or a tech ed class, flip-flops would be unsafe.
Right, okay.
Flip-flops, I think a lot of people will tell you they're not the safest shoe. I think many of us wear them, let's face it. They're very comfortable, and in a regular classroom, probably not a big problem. But certainly if you're in one of those classes, we would not want you wearing flip-flops. Overly high heels, shoes, and this is not really in right now, but it has been in the past and could be again. Shoes that are overly adorned can be problematic. So yes, and so the one thing that I do like about this policy is it does allow administrators to change with the times, having to come back to a policy committee again. And I think that if you want to build in, and we do have built-in structures so that we know that it's not going to be an arbitrary implementation, is that they have to be fair to everybody. If they're going to single someone out, they have to have a reason for singling someone out. Jan, you have worn these inappropriate shoes every day for 2 weeks. We've tried all these different things. Now we're singling you out. You can no longer wear that type of shoe. And that is explained in the last two paragraphs, that there is incremental discipline if you want to continue to violate this.
Good, okay, good. And then two other comments/questions. One is D, and I completely agree with the sunglasses obstructing the face. As you were reading it, it made me think of masks though. And so do you anticipate any issues associated with the argument that sunglasses cover much of the wearer's face, but I would say that a mask covers even more?
Yeah, I don't necessarily anticipate that we're going to have that problem, because we have health policies that have been adopted that say that in the situations that we have found ourselves in the recent past, that would sort of trump this. Yeah. And I think that a lot of discussion about masks amongst the students at the committee meeting. And as a matter of fact, the student who really started this whole discussion brought it to high school administration because he wanted the opportunity to wear a baseball hat in school, which is not allowed at this time. And even he, when he came forward, said, I understand that you can't do it while you're wearing masks, because then you have this, this lid that's down over your brow and this mask that covers you to here. And it's impossible to know if you even belong in the building. And that's a safety concern. But I think that we understand that masks will trump all of these other things, and those other policies will address it. And we kept it intentionally vague here for that reason.
Yeah, well, and right, and your point is the masks are a health aid, and even in the sunglass thing, it says unless you need it for, a health need. So that makes perfect sense. And then just, this is getting to Steve's question. Is there an appropriate length? And this is really, McKenna, if you have insight into this, is there an appropriate length that, because I know I've seen policies where they say that the length of a skirt or shorts must be, when you lower your arm, it has to reach your fingertips. Is there an appropriate length that that we could define? Because I realize what we're getting at here is that things that shouldn't be lower than the hem of a short shouldn't be seen. But and so I'll tell you the reason for my question. I've been in the school when I've seen students, because I love what you wrote about that the standard is higher than other casual settings. I love that. That's very clear, and it's appropriate. I've seen some students where they wear the baggy sweatshirt. They're wearing shorts, but you can't quite tell that they're wearing shorts because the shorts are shorter than the sweatshirt. So that's really the driver for my question. Is there an appropriate length that we would like to see to more clearly define that we don't want to see more than your leg, but we really only want to see 3/4 of your leg, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I totally get that question. It's a great question. I think that we really tried to be intentional on like being vague, but also like having the boundaries in this policy, because it really depends on body type and like how visually, do your arms reach this thing with your fist closed, or do your fingertips touch? And it totally depends on the person, and we really didn't want to single out certain body types or women or any sort of, we didn't want to do any singling out, especially in a policy that we wanted to change with time and be a little more timeless and have different administrators be able to change, and then have all 3 schools be able to adopt it with the age group. And I think that it is really hard to say like your shorts have to be fist length, your skirts need to be fingertip length, especially now because fingertip length shorts are stuff you wear to like board ed meetings, not school.
It's true.
So shorts reach that length. That is a great question. I think definitely one that we struggled with a lot, and we'll probably continue to debate. I think it is one of those judgment calls that you have to let the administrators and teachers deem appropriate or safe.
Yeah, and you just see how it goes and then adjust if necessary. But thanks for that explanation. That's great.
She did a fabulous job explaining it. In all my years as a high school administrator, the people who were singled out on this one were tall, long-legged young ladies. Always got singled out. And so as an administrator, I'd be called to address a young lady who would be sitting right next to another young lady with a very different body style. And I think this isn't fair and it's not appropriate, So we tried to get rid of all of those biases in this language. I think maybe something about the tops of the wearer's legs might do a better job of explaining what we're trying to say. We were trying to be so discreet that perhaps we were too discreet, right?
George, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. So maybe Jan had already touched on this. So my recollection of there was a student who basically started this whole conversation about the dress code, but I didn't realize it was just a student basically wanting to wear a baseball cap. I was remembering perhaps incorrectly that it was a more unusual hair, perhaps a hairstyle, something situation. And but if it's just a baseball cap, then the question is moot. But my question was, this policy will not come into effect for at least a couple of weeks. I'm just wondering whether, if it was not just a baseball cap, whether the student whether it'll be timely enough to impact the student to permit the student who brought it up to do whatever he or she wants to do, or has the student already graduated? Boy, that was a long question. Holy cow! I'm not sure if I made sense.
I think what you were asking, George, is the student that wanted to wear the baseball cap, will he still, or she still be in when we enact this?
Yeah, but I mean, if the question is a baseball cap, then that's moot. I mean, the answer is still no, right? But I thought the person wanted, it was some more of a religious or a hair situation, that a band situation that basically protected her hair or something, or his hair, and so, but it was just baseball cap. So that's pretty no.
Yep, I think it was a baseball cap, right, Jan?
Very good.
Yeah.
Eileen, I see your hand up. Alan was ahead of you, so just wanted to let you know that. So,
I just want to say religious headwear obviously has been honored with or without a policy.
Correct.
So Alan and then Eileen.
Yeah, so this is one of the policies we've spent more time on than any policy in my history on the board. And I think it's wonderful, frankly, that there was student input, and, McKenna had a big part in this. So it's something that directly impacts students. All the board members are talking about it, students talk about it. So I think it's great, first of all, but my only concern would be that, there's fairness and consistency. So if Julie wears a short dress last year and, she gets dinged for it because she was tall and she had long legs, and June wears a dress the next year and she doesn't. So, I mean, simplistically stated, but the point being, I think, the administrators will have to be hyper aware that they're treating students fairly in their discretion and their judgment, and that they're, not looking at a situation that's very similar differently, because that will affect students and how they perceive, administrators are, implementing this, and, holding folks to standards and so forth. So that's all I would say. So, cautionary is a strong choice of words, but I think there needs to be consistency over time. And, I think there probably should be, discussions about it across administrators when something comes up and somebody's disciplined about it. And, I'm sure Jan will be on top of that. And so that's all. Yeah, very well. And, looking forward to how it gets implemented.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I totally agree. Thanks for sticking up for the students. That definitely is something, and it also goes with the equity goal that's really important and been talked about a lot this year. And I think that having a policy like this gives the administration and the teachers an opportunity to really show that and demonstrate that and work on that throughout, because it's not giving you specific, it's giving guidelines. It's not like super specific, and so it gives you the opportunity to reflect and work together to make sure it's an equitable place.
Well said, McKenna. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Alan. Go ahead, Eileen.
I was going to say, bravo to be able to align this with equity. McKenna, totally thinking about the strategic plan. And I'm sure Jan is smiling. So my question is, how will this then get introduced to students so that they have an opportunity for a conversation versus just finding it in a handbook? Because I think this is not one of those policies that, would say, okay, 7 o'clock, that's when school starts. There's going to be a lot of conversation about this, and I'm not sure that all students would really be reading it. So Jan, thoughts and ideas? McKenna? I'm going to ask Jan first.
Well, there's been some discussion at both the high school and the middle school about this amongst staff and students. I wouldn't say all students, but if you wanted to have an opportunity at the high school, there was an opportunity for you to weigh in. At the middle school, I met with a small group of young ladies who were particularly concerned about females being singled out with dress code. So there are small pockets of students who know at each school, or larger pockets at the high school. What will most likely happen, I'm speaking for the administrators now, but I'm thinking, Chris Davis here, I'm thinking that this will probably need to be, other than in the handbook, it will need to be a discussion at the beginning of the year, because it is a departure from student dress codes that we've had in the past. And I think it's a positive departure. I think that this will be well received by students, mostly because of the explanations built into the policy, the whys. So I think it will be well received, and I think that administrators will need to review it with students and with teachers, because very often, as an administrator, teachers will come to us and say, "You need to go address so and so," and you're not always in agreement on that. So at least you now have a policy that says, "Okay, well, this is what it says we need to be doing." You can wear a hat at the high school as long as we're not wearing masks. You can't wear your sunglasses, but you can wear a sweatshirt and it can have a hood on it, so it'll be a bit of a change of culture, but I think for the better. McKenna, what do you think?
I totally agree with what you're saying. I think it's a great question and great point to bring up, that how you approach it to the students is very important. I think that a lot of the new changes that are going on that are excellent, whether it's scheduling or this, the approach for the students is really important because it kind of sets the tone, and the words that you're using, you want to have the positive connotation and not have people kind of throw their hands up and be like, "Oh no, what does that mean?" And I think the whys, like Ms. Peruccio said, is going to be really critical, and having those frank conversations and explanations is great on how you want to kind of see the future and move forward.
Great. That's awesome. Any other discussion on this, or do we want to move on to the next group of policies? Okay, I'm going to take it. Go ahead.
Everybody has any ideas in terms of making that one statement, shorts and skirts should not be worn if they expose more than the wearer's legs. We're open to it. Just wanted, to throw that out. I'm going to try to maybe do some wordsmithing too.
Mrs. Pendleton recommended covers the upper thighs.
There you go.
That could do it, So it could be that simple a tweak, and we still keep this on the consent agenda. So, the consent agenda actually is Thursday, so not a whole lot of time between, but it seems like we can fix that by Thursday.
Yeah. Upper thighs is good. Specific enough, but not ridiculous.
Jen, you want to just read that sentence and say what you would think would be a change? Shorts and skirts.
Shorts and skirts should not be worn if they expose more than the wearer's upper thighs. Tops must cover the torso.
I think that's clear.
But wait, that's kind of if they expose more than the upper thighs, they
wouldn't be acceptable.
Shorts and skirts should not be worn if they expose more than the wearer's upper thighs.
Lower thighs, because you can't, right? Because
upper thighs.
If they expose more than the upper thighs, which means that it's exposing the upper thighs, but it can't expose. Yeah, you got to just work on that wording.
Because otherwise then, you're right. I see what you're saying, Karina.
Right, because shorts.
Yeah. Well, this we worded, so we'll come with something else. Yeah, we'll put our heads on it.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks for bringing it up, Steve, initially, and we will all take a look at it.
Okay, very good. Good conversation about student dress. And that's just as, that conversation is always just as exciting at the school level. Series 6000 on limited exemptions to in-person attendance. This is just state statute, which again is going to change on us. We're going to see the policy come back. The state statute indicated that during this year, we could not allow people to keep children home and learn remotely unless there was a specific health issue with that student that kept them home. And then we could use that as a means of educating students for a period of time. And this is just in response to the door that had been opened during the shutdown of COVID when everyone was learning remotely. And then when we came back, some people were allowed to keep their children home because they were uncomfortable sending them to school. And the state basically put a stake in the ground and said, no more of that. Now kids have to go back to school. And so that's just codifying that. As I said, you're going to see it again because they're creating new language coming out of this most recent meeting of the legislators, the General Assembly that just ended last month. Stop them before they legislate again. There's lots and lots of education legislation that will be put in policy for us to work with next year. The 9,000 minutes Hang on, I got to get to my cheat sheet. Technical edits and the June special session from last year talks about when one or more board members attend by means of electronic equipment. That was through April 30th, 2022. So hang on, let me make sure. Oh, it adds the internet website that you have to put the minutes on the internet website. And actually, number 6, the last section, can be struck because it's no longer legit. When we started working on this policy, it still was in existence and it is no longer. So we'll strike that one actually from the version that you're seeing. There's statute that's going to replace that. So this policy will also come back next year. And then finally, the last one, this is good news for board members. Reimbursement of board member expenses. So not so much for attending board meetings, but if you go to a conference or a professional development, something CABE runs or something else, you can and should submit receipts. I believe the practice, the policy is the same as it is for all of us here who are employees, which is that, you make people aware ahead of time that you're going to be incurring this expense so that we can plan accordingly. Receipts for lodging, meals, taxis, driving your car, parking fees, et cetera, et cetera. Any questions on those? Nothing like dress code.
No, not nearly as interesting.
Always, always, always. It's always a crowd pleaser.
For sure. All right. So as Jan said, these will be back, and there might be some exceptions that we end up dropping out, but for the most part, these will be back on Thursday's consent agenda, which means that we vote on them as a block. So just be prepared for that on Thursday.
So Jan, question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the reimbursement of board members, have board members always been allowed to be reimbursed, or because I'm looking at it, that it looks like that it's a 2021 shipment in Goodwin. So is this new for board members? It seems like it is.
It isn't
in existence.
That part is new, but what we typically have done, Eileen, is we've actually paid like entrance fees to conferences and that. We've done it up front, the board account.
Right.
Now what it's saying is if you say to Tara, I need to go to this conference, I'm going to go and represent the board, you just save your receipts as you would for any employee situation.
I'm just saying that looks like it's new for education.
That part is, yep, it is.
Yeah, just so board members are aware. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so if we are all set with policy, we'll move on to reports by administration. So obviously, with the exception of Mr. Plotkin, we didn't invite the administrators here. However, Julie is here. So I propose that, if you have any questions in regards to the rest of the reports that we received from the administration, to let us know and we can go back to them, to get your questions answered. But otherwise, since Julie's here, why don't we start with Julie's report?
Okay, thank you, Tara. So we prepared this report a few weeks ago. We do know that there have been some sort of typical end of the year expenditures, continuing with some repair work, things like that. We also anticipate that there will be a definite surplus. A lot of the surplus, as you already know, is a result of transportation is a big part of it because we just didn't have all the buses running and we consolidated runs. Drivers, weren't always available. Lots of substitute money left. So salary, some salary surplus as well. Our unexpended funds, I should say. And then we will be receiving about $260,000 from the state for the excess cost agency placement special education expenditures. So putting all those pieces together will result in a fairly sizable unexpended balance. Jan and I have done a lot of talking about, what we think that this balance should be used for. We're hoping that we would be able to report to the board in July what that balance is, and then request that the town take those unexpended funds and put them into project accounts, which we know we're going to have significant upcoming projects. And we were unable to prepare bid specs and get equipment and all of these things. They're a year out. So it's a good reason for us not being able to do the normal kinds of projects we would do at the year end and put that money towards these projects for future endeavors. So I think that's the plan. We wouldn't, be able to go out and just expend funds and bring you a project list like we've done in the past, but we would rather name some of those projects and have that balance go into either a sinking fund or something that we can use for air conditioning, paving, boiler, roof. We know the big things coming up. The turf is down the road that will need replacing. So, it would be an account to be able to do some of those future projects that are, sizable, certainly outside of the operating budget.
Great. Questions for Julie? Steve, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Back on April 5th, we had talked about increasing the prices on the food. Would we be able to use some of these excess funds to cover that $50,000 that we basically incurred by not increasing the food costs?
So it would probably be difficult for the town to put the money into a sinking fund for food because that's typically for capital. However, we do have the funds that Jan and I have spoke about on other occasions, whereby these are funds that have been put into what we call an off-budget account, and those funds, if need be, perhaps could be used. We would come to you, to the Board of Education, should we see the need for funds to be transferred into the food service budget.
Just food for thought.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No pun intended.
Yeah, that was really a.
George, go ahead. I see your hands up.
Am I on?
Yes.
Thank you. So a couple of questions here, Julie. So clearly the numbers that stand out in terms of the last column on the negative balances are these are all abbreviations. So I'm guessing it's going to be tech-related, hardware, machine vehicles, and Fern, and one I guess is something further up, so construction. And I think the numbers are something like -50, -130, and -240. And so I presume that these correlate with the top three items in your table, where you had the mower and the gym floor and so on. And so that makes so you're nodding. So that's good. So at least I understood that part. So I guess my question is, why are these not the full amount that you had anticipated in the top part of the table? So, just for example, right, you had anticipated 450,000 for technology upgrade, and right now you're only over budget by 240. Is there a reason why we didn't go the whole 450 amount?
So great question, George. So the 240 that you see, you approved at the last board meeting the Wi-Fi upgrade, which was about $290,000. We had funds in that line item for the purchase of some of that, as well as when we buy Chromebooks, that's out of another line item. It's out of supplies, not out of equipment. So the balance that remained in the account plus the 290 put us over by that 235,000. So we bought equipment and we expended the money to upgrade the Wi-Fi. And instead of being over by more with the money in the account that was already in the line item that had not been expended thus far, paid for that other portion.
Okay, so I guess I'm just trying to, thank you for that, but I'm just trying to guess the digital pages to this. I guess it's the bottom of your report, right? Your written report. And so the table, the asterisk basically says, asterisk, I'll just read, we also have indicated the items that we have purchased with year-end funds. These are just estimated amounts, and in most cases would not fund the entire project. And I guess I'm just trying to understand that last part, that's not funding the entire project, that if at the current state you have a positive balance, why do we not go ahead and fund the entire project? Or am I misunderstanding this?
So what that's actually saying is, if you look at the estimates for air conditioning, the boilers, the roof, the paving, and the generator, those last items,
Yep.
those are just estimates of perhaps what we could do with the year-end balances, the money that's left unexpended. But it wouldn't necessarily pay for the entire project for any one of those. For instance, air conditioning is going to be $1 million, not 300.
I understand.
So it's putting
sorry.
some money towards each of those buckets.
So the second part of that asterisk is not related to the top 3 items.
Correct.
Sorry, my bad. I thought the whole asterisk was.
That's okay. No, I
understood.
can see where you could see that.
Understood. Fair enough. Well done. And it's always a nice report. It's and it's always at this point, it's always good to have a positive balance than a negative balance. So
True.
If I could just remind the board that once the business department closes the fiscal year and does all their final accounting, I will send a letter to the first selectman and CC it to the board chair, indicating, how much money, if any, in this case there will be, the Board of Education is returning to the town, and indicating that we would like that put into specific named project sinking funds. That is something that is done on the town side, and we're going to try to be more conscientious if whenever there is additional money at the end of the year in making those requests. I think that that's beneficial to both the Board of Ed and to the town, because it keeps us from having to bond projects in some cases. It allows us to plan accordingly. It's not quite as good as our original goal a few years ago of actually having a line item where we could do this and fund this every year, but this is second to that, and we're hoping to get that support.
Alan, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Jan, just a follow-up comment to your point with the Board of Finance or the town. So my understanding is, being at some of the meetings and reading some of the minutes and so forth, that the Board of Finance is open to just what you described, what you would do at the end of the year, that you would have a named account or designation. And that's what they requested, isn't it? Or is that what Julie and you came up with? I just want to clarify.
Yes and yes. Yeah, I think there were members of the Board of Finance all along who were hoping that we would do that. So this is sort of a progression over time. Yeah. We had no sinking fund on the capital non-recurring fund on the town side, as every other department did. And I understand we're a little bit different. The Board of Education's authority comes from the state, and so we are a little bit different, but the finances primarily come from the town and the people who live in the town. So we were able to get that through back just before Chairwoman Barros became the chair. And then and now we are moving into this progression of looking more like the town side of, let's put these into named accounts, named funds. In one town where I work, we used to always call them I literally thought they were called the roof account in every town, because that's all we called them. Yeah. So I think
anything under the roof.
Yeah, right.
But not including the roof. Well, no, Jan, I appreciate that, discussion or just your comments about that, because it really has been a process, and it seems to always have been moving in the right direction. And I see Julie smiling. I think, she's worked really hard to get to this point. So, let's cross our fingers and hope that, if there's money returned, that it's earmarked in the way we would like it to as a board. Right. So that's great. Just one other question, Julie, in terms of the HVAC potential grants that would be given by the state, we don't know. We have to apply, right? But if we set aside X number of dollars for air conditioning and we get a grant and we're reimbursed more than we set aside, or or there's well, I shouldn't say more. If there's a balance, say, let's just use simple numbers. They give us 100,000. We had a $200,000 expense. How does that get reconciled in terms of, we were planning on a $200,000 expense?
So
but then we get
these grants are very similar to the one that we applied for when we did the fence and the lighting at the high school. You had to spend the money first, and then you got reimbursed. So my hope would be that we would spend the money out of either the sinking fund or the off budget accounts, and that if the reimbursement came back to the town, that they would put it back into those accounts. That's typically how it's done. We did receive, by the way, the money for the fence and the lighting at the high school. That grant did come. And my understanding is Carl was going to make the recommendation to put that money back into our sinking fund. So, that's
right.
When you have to expend the money up front, it's a little bit different than what we call reimbursement grants. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that explanation. That helps me understand it better. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. Any other questions for Julie? No, great. Thank you, Julie. That was a great report. So of course, our other administrator that is here this evening, obviously, is Superintendent Peruccio. So does anybody have any questions for Jan in regards to her report? And Jan, any color commentary from your perspective? Oh, go ahead, Eileen. Still muted.
Good.
There you go. Go ahead.
Jan, I was curious. You said in your report that with CAPS, you were putting together some legislative priorities. Can you give us any hints on where you think that CAPS might be moving in terms of addressing things that for the future?
So CAPS has a blueprint that was created a few years ago with the help of Ted Sergi and Kathy Gay, both people who worked for the state for many years and understand the inner workings of the finances of the state of Connecticut. So we're going to continue to push amongst many other issues, some of which cause us to have a defensive posture more than anything. But we're going to continue to move forward that blueprint, which includes a school funding plan that implements over 15 years full funding of special education. And so bits and pieces of that plan have been adopted through the hard work of lots of folks going there and meeting with their legislators. But it has not been as we had hoped, and hoped, it was a distant hope, that they would adopt it in full. So we'll continue to move that forward. We'll continue to ask them to reconsider some of the decisions that were made this spring that were very concerned will have a lasting impact on students and teachers. And we'll continue to weigh in on things like this HVAC legislation, which is very well intended, but on a very tight timeline, and also very expensive. And we were able to make some headway in slowing them down a bit this year, and we're hoping to continue to have a voice in that sort of work.
So one of the things I think I saw in Amity's report, but you probably could reflect on it, is that you're such a champion, obviously, with CABE and CAPS in terms of reducing mandates. Mm-hmm. And, and I'm seeing it even in Amity's report, again, trying to integrate different types of studies, whether it's Asian studies, et cetera, et cetera. And so while those are all important, my question is, you can't do it all. So there's something that's got to go, because it's not an elective. It probably has to get integrated. So all students get the opportunity to get exposure, if I'm correct.
So one of the things that I want to talk to the legislators about is they've done some things this year that will keep us from being able to be creative with some regional programming. And there's no way that all of our schools on the shoreline are going to be able to teach Asian American, Black and Latino, and personal finance. She named all of the different pieces of curriculum that have been mandated in the last few years. Again, no one's standing up up against any of them. It's just how to fit them in with the curriculum and not abandon other components of the curriculum. So one of the things I want to work on this year with our legislative committee is to have them reinstitute some of the freedoms that we had for remote learning, so that we can have one teacher in one school teaching kids all over the shoreline. Unfortunately, they implemented some things that are going to stop that this year. So we've got work to do. We got plenty of work to do to keep us busy on that front.
Thanks, Jan. I appreciate it, keeping us up, abreast. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Eileen. George, you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. So again, this is probably more related to Amity's report, but but with Jan, you've been on the legislative committee, or I guess chairing the legislative committee. My question was also on the unfunded mandates that's coming through, and I was very surprised that the teacher mentoring program is no longer funded. I was just curious to know whether that's just an Ode Saybrook or a perceived wealthier town issue, or whether it's a statewide non-funding of teacher mentors.
Statewide.
Yeah, it's statewide.
Wow.
Yeah. So the answer to everything these days seems to be use your ESSER funds. It's only one pot of money. We didn't get that much of it. And that really doesn't help us, doesn't help any community, even a community that got $10 or $15 million. It doesn't help them once 2024 comes and goes. So I think they're reprioritizing. I know there's a lot of work that has to come out of the state on teacher evaluation. As you might remember, we've been in limbo on teacher evaluation for 2 years now, which is not good for teachers. It's not good for schools. It's not good for administrators or kids. And I think that they're going to have to rethink all of these things. We do need mentors and coaches for new teachers, and they do need to be teachers from the ranks. And so they're going to have to come up with ways to support it. Yeah, I think I've answered your question, George. Let me know if you have a follow-up.
It does. Yeah, I was disappointed, obviously. Yeah.
Karina, go ahead.
So this is, you alluded to this a little bit, Jan, in a little earlier, and I don't know, we saw a letter from, I think, was it Tolland, that they sent to the state legislature about some of the decisions that they made.
Enfield,
Enfield, right? Is that something that, is there any action that we as a board should take in support of that sort of thing? Or do you feel confident that, you have avenues as an influencer at the state level to be able to try to help some of those decisions maybe be changed?
So I think the more voices that we get involved in that sort of advocacy, the better off we are. CABE is certainly an organization specifically for boards of education. Patrice McCarthy was always an advocate at CABE who had the ear of people up in Hartford. Great person to connect with. I believe she's going to be their new executive director at CABE. And working with CABE and CAPS, and even administrators working with CAS, and even just reaching out to your local legislators. Devin Carney's on the education committee. So reaching out to them is a great idea. And if we all wanted to talk a little bit about what we see as the biggest priorities in the fall and create some language that each of you could walk around with. And when you have an opportunity to say, hey, Devin, can I, or hey, Norm Needleman, can we talk to you about this? I think that every single one of those conversations can matter.
So maybe that's something we should consider as a board, maybe at a future agenda item.
Yeah. I certainly love to talk about it.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Karina. I'll make a note of that. Like Jan said, probably, on one of our fall meetings.
They'll go into session at the end of January, beginning of February. So we want to have language ready November, December.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Eileen, you had a question?
I say that we have legislative breakfast, but years ago, we used to have a legislative breakfast in Old Saybrook, but I'm thinking in terms of tagging on to what Karina said, once we address it maybe as a board, maybe it's a good idea just to have a special Board of Education meeting where we bring, our representatives to the board and we ask them questions to our board meeting and just have a single item agenda and ask them the kinds of questions and have that dialogue. Because sometimes they don't come necessarily to a legislative breakfast, they can't come. And so that way it's a face-to-face recognition. And I think it's usually effective.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly this year, some of our legislators weren't interested in receiving information from us, but they are certainly happy to give us information. And some of them, I think, are the, genesis of some of this stuff that we were just talking about. So go ahead, Jane, you had a comment.
Your timing, actually, in thinking about this, it might be very good because they're predicting that up to 40% of the members of the General Assembly next year will be either freshmen or second year. So, we're going to have turnover in the Paul Formica spot. I'm not sure what other turnover there will be. So I think it's really important that we might get to connect with these people and put Old Saybrook on the map with them so that when we send an email or pick up the phone, they respond, or at least someone an aide in their department respond. Good time to do that.
No, I think that's a great idea.
Right after the elections.
Right.
Yeah. And I just want to say, McKenna and Matthew, I know it's past 8:30. If you would like to drop, thank you guys again.
Thank you for this year. It was great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's been great.
See you guys at graduation.
See you
tomorrow.
So other questions for Jan, I think this is a great idea for, fall topic for sure. Certainly if we can prepare ourselves for the, annual January session. Did you have a question? Go ahead.
I just had a question, maybe somebody could answer, or maybe Heston. I didn't know when it said Goodwin is getting into a new consult SharePoint.
Yep. So I knew someone was going to ask, and I made sure I knew what that was about. The relationship, the partnership between Matt Walton and Heston Sutman has brought some middle school practices to Goodwin School, and I'm sure vice versa. So the middle school has had a very well developed consult model. And what consult is really a way for the adults in the school to get together and brainstorm solutions for working with students. And the middle school has had a very robust, well-developed model and a system that has worked well in supporting students. And then that model now has been adopted by the Goodwin staff and it has been implemented there.
Thank you. Karina, go ahead.
I want to know about the goats.
There's a picture on my phone of me with 2 goats, and I titled it 3 Old Goats. So, so yeah, the goats have been a huge hit at the wellness days. I don't know, Dave, if you want to talk all about goats at the middle school, but they were at both Goodwin and the middle school, and the kids love them, and the adults, everybody just gets on the ground and plays with the goats. It's just so they just look so joyful while they're doing it. I know I did. Dave, anything to add?
No, I think you hit it. I think it's so funny to see 12, 13-year-old middle school students see this little goat and just melt in the goat's kind of embrace. It was really neat to see, and a welcomed kind of wellness activity.
Where do they come from?
That's awesome.
Massachusetts.
Oh, they bring them from Massachusetts?
I could be wrong, but I feel like they were from not local.
Special therapy goats.
Yeah.
Okay. Yoga goats.
Yoga goats. Exactly. It's important.
They're just so cute. And it's true. These big hulking kids jump on the ground and they're making all these cute little kid noises. It's fun to watch.
That's awesome.
Next time, let us know when they're there. I would love to come one day.
Yeah. We also had dogs. We've had a menagerie this year, and it's been really healthy for kids.
Nice.
That's awesome. So any other questions for Jan before we move on?
Just a quick comment. I'm just in reading all the, particularly Goodwin's report, just the kids are getting out and doing field trips, and visiting places and being involved again in the community. It's got to be music to the teachers' ears, and I'm sure the kids and the parents. So, that's just a wonderful thing. And I wanted to comment on Jan and Police Chief Sarah Sparrow's communications to community around, the horrible tragedy that happened a week or so ago, and just how well written and supportive those communications were to the community. Jen, I know you had a huge part in that, and appreciate the collaboration with the chief of police. And to me, I'm not a parent of a kid in school now, but it certainly would have put me at ease and helped me felt more comfortable about sending my kid to one of the schools the next day. So thank you for those communications.
Yeah. Eileen, did you have a question?
Yeah, no, just quickly. It's a comment. Actually, Jen gave me permission just to listen in, to the parent. What do we call it, Jen?
Just parent chat and just
and I haven't gotten an opportunity. It was delivered so beautifully, with such a command and such a genuineness from both you and Chief Spira, that whoever was able to listen, which is nice, it comes in a variety of ways. You can listen, or if you read, but it was spectacular and wonderfully done, beautifully done by both of you, beautifully done.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I will share the compliments.
Awesome. All right, well then let's move on to our reports by board committees. George, anything from budget and fiscal?
No, nothing to report. Thanks.
Thanks. Eileen, anything special from CABE?
Not necessarily. They're getting ready for a transition, as Jan said, for a new president, which will be Patrice McCarthy, executive director.
Thanks, Eileen. Alan, anything from facilities?
No, other than I would just ask Julie to give us a 10-second update on the lights, because so much has happened over the last few months, and will happen over the next few months. So Julie, if you would, or Jan, a quick update would be great for us, I think.
Sure. So we're it's coming fast and furiously. We have a pretty concrete schedule ready to go. There'll be some digging now that baseball is done. There'll be some digging probably starting next week, and that will be to prepare the power to be brought from the press box to both access points for the lights and the posts. We have all of the contractors lined up starting July 6th. There will be 8 large tractor trailer trucks bringing the mats that go onto the field to protect the field during the construction. Then there will be lights delivered on July 11th, and you will see digging start either that day or the next day. Posts will start to be dug. They'll start to put the concrete into each of the posts to secure them. There'll be a huge crane out there. And then once the posts are in and the lights are on them, then there's about 3+ weeks of work for the electrical aspect. So that's a pretty complicated and long process to get all the electrical from the street to the press box to the controller to the lights. Sounds simple, but it's got a lot involved. So everybody's lined up. All the subcontractors have secured dates with them. I'm praying that the weather doesn't go crazy on us and we don't have any, unusual storms and so forth, because it's very hard to line up some of these people. So I think come rain or shine, we will be digging, and it's so far everything looks like it's a go.
Thanks, Julie. That's great information. Great work.
Yeah, excellent. I can't believe, I know it probably doesn't feel like fast to you, Julie, but it does seem like it's moving quickly.
I just hope it happens without, how projects are. You just
don't even say it, because nothing ever happens like that.
So I'm just
fingers crossed.
Everything crossed.
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to be the rain cloud. But I just make sure that nobody has this the idea that August 15th we're going to be ready to go. It could happen, absolutely. But let's just remember, all projects have at least one hiccup.
I should tell you that as of today, I don't even know if I told, I think I told you this, Jan, in one of our conversations, but so part of the approval process for the lights was planting a lot more trees.
Mhm.
There will be 33 arborvitaes on Ingham Hill. And then we have to plant another, I think it's 14 or 16 trees along Route 1. Has to have a tree every 40 feet.
Doing your part for the environment, Julie. That's good.
I'm trying. I have to work that out, that we don't, block the view of the parking lot and that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of trees going in. A lot of tree pruning in that budget. I just want you to know.
It's my favorite line item. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Julie, and thank you, Alan. All right, Trevor, you're up. Any updates from Learn?
Yeah, I actually went to the first Learn meeting that I was involved with last month, and it meets once a month, second Thursday of the month in the morning, which is a difficult time, but still, I went, and I just want to update that they've struggled with losing people this past year, as most of the schools have. So that's been a big challenge for them. Sadly, I'm not going to be able to make the meeting this Thursday, but I'm going to try to make as many as I can. But I'm just happy to be part of it. So
thanks so much for participating, Trevor. I really appreciate it. And I know it's a tough time. Thursday mornings is a tough time to go to those meetings, but they're a valuable partner, and I appreciate any time that you can give them.
Thanks.
Thank you. So Karen's not here, so we'll skip over strategic planning. I've got nothing for demographics. It's been a quiet demographic year. Karen isn't here for personnel, but I know that we're getting ready to talk about the teacher's contract over the summer. Is that right or no?
Sorry, yes, teachers over the summer, secretaries tonight.
Yeah, secretaries are tonight, but teachers over the summer. George, you have a question?
Yeah, so just to step in on behalf of Karen. So on the personnel issue item, there is in the executive folder a summary of Jan's evaluation that basically Karen writes every year, and so my
we'll
bad.
be talking about that in executive session.
Yeah, so I just want to bring that up, and I guess we can talk about more about that. I forgot whether we actually approved that document or whether there is time for question comments back to Karen and it gets approved next time. I forget how it worked.
I think it gets approved this time, George. So we talked about it at the and we'll talk about it in executive session further, but it's basically just what we talked about in our last meeting, codifying it in a document. We'll discuss it in executive session and hopefully come out of executive session and approve that review tonight. So more to come on that.
Very good. Thank you.
That up. Eileen, anything further on policy? I know that was basically tonight's meeting was only policy. I'm kidding. And I have nothing to report from a chairman's perspective. So with that, Mr. Plotkin, it was lovely to see you. I'd look for a motion to go into executive session, inviting in Jan and Julie. Does anyone want to make that motion? A move by Trevor and seconded by Eileen, but by Mr. Plotkin. So everybody's going to hang up from this meeting and we're going to join the other meeting link that Trent sent out. So leave this meeting, join Trent's meeting, and then we'll come back to this. Thank you.
Julie, you're in the wrong meeting.
I don't
Go to-
have the other link, I don't think.
I sent it around 6:30. It's a Google Meet.
Okay.
I can send it to you again if you need me to.
All right, let me just look, Trent. I thought this was the same one. That's why I was like, what the heck? All right, I'm gonna leave this.
welcome back. Please be reminded that we are still streaming live on YouTube. Anything that you say or do will be seen on camera and or heard.
Gosh, Trent, that almost sounded like Miranda rights.
I'm not going to let the board that I'm responsible for make the news for the wrong reasons.
We appreciate that.
You take such good care of us.
Are we waiting?
Just making sure that everybody makes it back. And yep, I think we're all back. All right, so we are exiting executive session at 9:14 p.m. And for our first order of business, I'd like a motion to approve the secretary's contract as presented. Moved by Trevor, second by Alan. All in favor, aye. All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. And the second motion I'd like to ask for is a motion to approve this.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Point of clarification, just before we move on, I wanted to, under Series 9000 bylaws, quorum and voting procedures, number 2, voting procedures F, board members shall have the opportunity to explain their votes with the explanation to be recorded in the minutes. I
Sure.
just wanted to exercise that right.
Go ahead, Steve.
So I just wanted to explain that I voted no because I do not think that the board should be asking our employees to increase our cost shares while we ask the administration not to. If that could be so recorded, that would be great.
Thank you. So noted. All right, so I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the superintendent's evaluation as presented. Trevor made the motion, a second by Steve. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so moved, and that was unanimous. And so just a reminder, we'll likely have a special meeting on Thursday. And of note, one of our agenda items will be the school start time. Just want to make sure that that's noted in case there are people that are interested in commenting on that. George, you have a question?
Just to confirm, Thursday meeting is in person?
Thursday meeting will be in person, yes. And I'll have Trent reach out to confirm times, as that may be 2 meetings that evening. So I'll make sure that everybody's aware of what that schedule is. And
no,
also,
the start wouldn't be any earlier than 5:30, whether there's 1 or 2 meetings.
I think you said 5:30. And the other meeting.
no earlier. Yeah, no earlier than that.
No earlier than 5:30.
Yep.
So more to follow on that. Also, just a reminder that our graduation is next Thursday on the 16th. And I know some of you can't make it, but I always think it's the most joyful day of the year. So hopefully we'll be seeing most of you there. And with that, like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Eileen, seconded by Steve. All in favor? Aye. All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.